Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce the fourth and final of the Simmons brothers, Luca.
Ms. Turner, Mr. Schmick, Mom, Dad, students, and faculty. For the past 18 years, I've taken most things for granted. Whether it is various accounts my parents have given me, like credit cards at the Gilman Country Store or at Eddie's, my relationships with friends or family, or where I live. But the most notable thing I've taken for granted over the years is my relationship with my oldest brother, Anthony, and all he has done for me. Don't get me wrong, I love Giancarlo and Marco, and both my parents have done so much for me, and I love them both. But I can't say enough about the impact Anthony has had on me. When I was in 4th grade, I was diagnosed with a severe kidney disease, which left me in the hospital at the University of Maryland for 7 days and nights, and put me out of school for 3 months. Anthony was a junior at Gilman at the time, which, as all we upperclassmen know, is probably the toughest year of high school. He played football, wrestled, and played baseball. And at the time when I was most sick, he was wrestling. The first night I was in the hospital, Anthony came strolling in with my favorite jelly beans and tossed them to me, saying, "Here you go, Ron. I know you like these." He calls me Ron or Ronald because when I was younger, I was obsessed with farmers and tractors, and he thought that Ronald was a good farmer's name. A huge smile came upon my face and relieved all the pain I was in. He then proceeded to lie down next to me in the hospital bed and started talking to me about random stuff like dogs, food, Pokemon, video games, and sports. That conversation went on for a couple hours till he was forced to go home. The next day, my mom said, "Anthony is coming for lunch." I got really excited, got up, which I think was frowned upon, walked with my IV machine to the window of my 5th floor room to be on the lookout for the white 1984 Mercedes station wagon, which is the one I'm currently driving, coming down Green Street in Baltimore City. Sure enough, the wagon came down the street. 5 minutes later, he walked into the room with a smile on his face, saying, "Ron, what's up?" He stayed for about 30 minutes, hung out, and then had to go back to school. Anthony then came back after wrestling practice with my brothers and hung out with me, played Nintendo 64, and sat on my bed that night till about 1 a.m. This sequence went on for all 7 days and nights. He came every lunch with friends and then drove my brothers to my room at night after school. He did things just to make me smile and relieve my pain. Mind you, he was a junior at Gilman at the time and had a lot of stuff to do, and yet still found the time to come see me. But it didn't stop there. On January 31st, 2003, when I came home from the hospital, I was still not allowed to go back to school. So every free period he had, he would come home and visit me to make sure I was happy and feeling better. Over the course of the next 3 months, he nearly spent all of his free time with me. And on weekends, he wouldn't go out until he had spent at least a couple hours hanging out with me. One instance of a small thing he did for me was when he wrestled in what they call the Gilman duels. And for those wrestlers who win every single match, usually around 3, they gave a medal to. Well, I was too sick to watch him wrestle, so I had to sit there and wait for him to get home to see how he did. When he walked into the kitchen with the gold medal and said, "Here you go, Ron, I did this for you, man," an instant smile came to my face. As the year went on and I got better and became more aware, our relationship grew stronger. He continued to make sure I was doing well and had a smile on my face by taking me to Six Flags on weekend ice cream runs, to Orioles games, played video games with me, and did things like that. The next year as a 5th grader, I got to see his senior speech. When I heard these words, "My little brother Luca is the strongest kid I know," I instantly sank down in my seat. He was completely wrong. His speech was about how strong he thought I was, what the doctors were saying, and what was really going on with me. Well, obviously, this embarrassed me a lot. I was shocked when I learned for the first time from his speech that the doctors said I would no longer be allowed to play contact sports for the rest of my life. This was a big wake-up call for me because I finally realized how big of an impact he really had on me, both mentally and in the healing process. He didn't realize that every single day when I was in the hospital, I would look forward to he and his friends coming and hanging out with me. When I was at home, I looked forward to him coming home from school each day just so I could hear him scream, "Ron, what's up?" The doctors may have been amazed at my miraculous recovery, and yes, it was with a lot of prayers. But also, I truly believe if it weren't for Anthony, I wouldn't have been able to heal the way I did. In my head, I thank Anthony every day. He gave me the strength to keep going, and he put the smile on my face to get my mind off of what was really going on and kept my attitude positive. Even though visiting me in the hospital may have seemed like second nature to him, he didn't realize how big of an impact it had on me. His impact was especially clear during my freshman year when my best friend's dad passed away. I made sure I was with him every day and nearly spent all of my free time with him. The goals for my visit were just to get him to smile or comfort him or hang out with him. This type of thing I learned from Anthony. Everything I did for my best friend, Anthony had done for me. I took him to Orioles and Ravens games, went to Six Flags, got lunch with him, let him spend months at my house, literally months, and played video games with him. But to be honest, if Anthony hadn't had such an impact on me, I wouldn't have known how to help out my best friend during this tough time. But still, like I said, I tend to take everything for granted. After walking into my house on August 21st, 2010, without any hello from my mom or a friendly greeting from my dog, I quickly became suspicious. The next 5 minutes were like a dream for me. I walked into my front room and my mom said, crying, "Anthony is being deployed in 2 months to Iraq." In the Air Force, Anthony is a contracting officer which buys things for the Air Force. So it was especially surprising to us because we didn't think the Air Force needed new contracting officers in Iraq at the time. As I walked up the stairs, questions suddenly ran through my head like, why is he going? Why so sudden? How could this be? All the questions I didn't have the answer for. What if he doesn't make it back? I was not prepared to answer that question either, nor did I want to think about it, but that was the most frequent question that ran through my head during the next 2 months. My brother got to come home for about a week before he was shipped off, and for some reason it wasn't until October 21st, 2010, the night before he was deployed, that I said thank you to him. That's 8 years, and I couldn't for some reason tell him thank you. I had wanted to, but for some reason I just couldn't. The last time I saw him was on October 22nd. I told him I love him, that I'll miss him, and I'd see him in 6 months. I can honestly say that was the first time I had ever said I love you to my own brother. Everything he did for me, and never once did I say thank you nor I love you. In exactly 1 month, Anthony will be leaving Iraq and making his way back to Italy and eventually back home. Hopefully, if everything works out correctly, I will meet him in Italy and make sure I take full advantage of the opportunity to spend with him one-on-one. Even though we don't get to talk as much as I'd like to, once he gets back, he'll continue to kill me in video games, put me in line when I need it, and continue to be my bodyguard. Anthony is my role model and my hero. Without him, I don't know who I'd be. And everything I've done and continue to do, I do for him because of what he did for me and what he does for others. His acts of kindness throughout his life have really rubbed off on me. And without him, I would be a completely different person. Obviously, I could never come close to repaying him for everything he has done for me, but I will continue to try. Thank you.
We've got a few more that we need.
You wanna go?
Ms. Huntington Perkins?
I just want to remind everybody that signature applications are due this Friday, April 1st, and the application is on Moodle. If you go to other courses and search for signature, you'll find it, and I hope you get more applications.
Mr. Salcedo?
If cricket club, there's a frisbee game going on right now. I would like to see you at the front.
Go ahead.